Every leader has their strengths and weaknesses. Abraham Lincoln instigated martial law in 1861. If you're charged with a crime under martial law, you are considered guilty until proven innocent. More than 13,000 civilians were arrested under martial law during the Civil War. Shortly before he was assassinated, Lincoln found, to his surprise, that he was unable to convince other government leaders who had become addicted to their newfound powers to put an end to martial law. Historians say this is a simple lesson. It's easier to put abusive restrictions in place than it is to remove them. And it was stipulated that we would remain under martial law unless we have a period of peace for at least 10 years. That's why we've not had a period of peace last even 10 years ever since then. We are still under martial law because of that. Martial law is the imposition of the highest-ranking military officer as the military governor or as the head of the government, thus removing all power from the previous executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government. In the United States of America, who is the commander-in-chief of the military? The President. Abraham Lincoln initiated the Emancipation Proclamation to help free slaves, and Lincoln was assassinated in 1865. Then a portion of Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution of the United States was rewritten by the 14th Amendment in 1866. And the 14th Amendment also left a very important word out. You might think the slaves were beginning to be freed at that time. Guess what? The partial rewrite of Article 1, Section 2 left out the word free. People think Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. He did his best, but they were still passing laws to allow it long after. Well, all governmental law is written. And if it's not there, you cannot assume it. We went from whole number of free persons to whole number of persons. That just made slaves out of everybody. Under martial law, that's the kind of thing they can do. They just kind of make up their rules as they go. With our modern society governments, legislated acts of the people are always written, and many are not based on any law of nature at all. Our laws are supposed to be based on laws of nature. Those who really understand law, right? There's a staircase of laws. The Supreme Court only handles the highest law of the land, constitutional law, and that's above martial law, admiralty law, and statutory law. Higher than constitutional law is treaty law. That's how kings deal with each other. Higher than that is law of conquest, which is war. This is really important to understand because it's one of the reasons we've continued to have so many wars. Even higher than constitutional law, treaty law, and law of conquest is canon law. Do you know what that is? It's God's law. The laws of God, the laws of the universe, and laws of nature can be and are considered as all the same, meaning there are no contradictions. There are no contradictions when it comes to truth, only when combined with the philosophies of men, man's flawed perspectives. And this program will help you see all the abuse and imperfections for what they are. We've got the actual science of the laws of nature. We've got it. A lot of this actual science was buried. We've been warned about the philosophies of men from the start. Several areas of science have struggled between the scientific data and the scientific theory made by man. Mountains of actual scientific data have continued to be pushed aside when it has conflicted with the theories of men, which theories they may have wrapped around a web of emotional amoeba too painful for them to disturb. For example, a lot of the new DNA science has not mixed well with the carbon dating theory. When scientific data has not matched their philosophies, their theory, in fear they have thrown out the actual scientific data that could otherwise prove their theory wrong. If we're to take an objective and scientific view of things, we can't be too attached to either what we were taught by the lineage we were raised in or to the latest philosophies of men. Carbon dating continues to develop a bad reputation, yet how many lineages have now changed their story to match the carbon dating theory? Why? Because of fear, they feel like it's a competition to show how old their lineage is. And who wants to go against what the rest of the world has been trained to think? Fear of becoming a pariah, which means outcast, due to the gang mentality of the science and education scholar communities. The world we live in is no different than most civilizations in history in that respect. It has the same types of Pharisees and Sadducees that existed around the time of Christ, who were so quickly offended and willing to offend. Speaking of taking and giving offense, it may not always be the case, but I can't help but to have noticed it's usually those who take offense the most that give offense the most. And remember, people tell on themselves. Most of what people say and do is a reflection of what they're feeling and thinking about themselves. Other people tell on themselves all the time, and so do we. We can start a fight by being easily offended just as easy as we can by giving offense. And it seems for too many people, it's their favorite way to argue. They just complain about everything. We need to watch ourselves. Although I do my very best to be truly inspired, I never intended to be anyone's spiritual leader. I prefer to be known as a world peace and empowerment leader. I'm content with doing what I know I can to help empower everyone on the planet as much as I can, which is ultimately about all of us sharing the leadership with peace and love.